All right, we figured out PowerPoint, so we're good now. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kilian. I lead experience design at McKinsey, which I'll get into in a minute. But I also just first want to echo Todd's sentiments that I was judging this year, and I felt very privileged to be judging, and the award submissions were really exceptional. So thank you for all the incredible design work that you've all been doing. I really appreciate it, and for coming together to celebrate it. So McKinsey. I'm going to go back in time about a year, and then I'm going to introduce this wonderful speaker to my right. A little over a year ago, we both joined McKinsey a little over a year ago. I got a call from Kilian, who is now a digital partner there. At the time, had been leading Fjord, a design firm, the US group part of Fjord. And she and I have been trying to find ways to work together for years. And she called and said, hey, I think I might have something that's interesting now. And she explained this new sort of startup thing she wanted to start to build with a global design team and all these amazing sort of client consulting opportunities. I said, oh, that sounds great. Where? And she said, McKinsey. And I said, where? And we had many, many conversations after that. But basically, the woman to my right is Jennifer Speciale, and she is our head of global recruiting and responsible for building an amazing team. We're about a year in now. We've got 45 designers at McKinsey, which is a traditional business consulting firm, and we're changing the way that not only the firm thinks, but many of our clients think in terms of design thinking and execution. And of those 45 hires, about half of them are women. And Jennifer's been super active in sort of women in design community. And so I thought, who better than her to come and talk to us about that today? So once I got over my, it's McKinsey, and started to meet a lot of the people there and realized they were actually super brilliant business people, and they're kind of like the other half I'd been looking for all my career, I got really excited, and I came on to help build the global team with Jen. So, I've been in the industry over 20 years. I've built creative teams at Apple and Frog Design and lots of other more traditional design places. But I have to say, this is the best team I've ever worked with, and it's her fault. So it's been really, really wonderful. And I remember down to the last minute of getting sort of like the welcome email of where to show up, and the address was in Midtown, and I was already like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? And I get an email from Jen. I'm like, hey, I just want to reach out. I realized it didn't come up in the interview process, but I'm assuming this is like not a super formal, like I don't have to wear a suit, right? And her response back basically sealed my love for her, which was, no, everybody's walking around in Daisy Dukes here, so you're totally fine, whatever you want to wear. And for those who are not as old as me to miss that reference, it was a show, I think in the 70s maybe, called Dukes of Hazzard. Daisy Duke basically wore like these cut-off jean shorts and halter tops, so you can imagine the imagery. So it's been a really fun, wild ride. And just because I don't want to mess up anything that she's accomplished, I'm going to read a little bit more about her. So prior to joining McKinsey, Jen was recruiting at Fjord. And she also she worked with them through the transition as Accenture acquired them, which was no easy feat, and made that go smoothly. She has a penchant for languages and speaks Italian, Spanish, and Hindi, and English, which is great. She holds a master's degree in international relations, another in international business, which is probably why she can help with deep empathy across the business and designers. She has an undergraduate degree in neuroscience, and she has 4 published articles in the Journal of Neurotransmission, which is pretty cool. So without further ado, I'm going to let you tell us all about women in design.
I feel like you need a phone book to stand on. So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about design at McKinsey, because a lot of times when I talk to people, the first reaction is McKinsey has design, with a big question mark right over their heads. About 4 years ago, well 5 now, McKinsey started a new group called McKinsey Digital Labs. And that's mostly like the software engineers, the information architects, the scrum masters, the agile people. And somewhere in there, a couple of the guys from the group realized the need for a separate design group. And so they started by hiring a few freelancers here and there and trying to kind of figure out what designers actually do, mostly taking their cues from clients, which is always a little dangerous. But then last October, Kilian joined the firm from Fjord. And as Jennifer said, I was with Hio at Fjord. And I remember on my first day asking Hio, like, who are these guys that don't have design backgrounds trying to build a design team? And she said, I don't know, I think they're just badasses trying to figure it out. And that totally resonated with me. So I was like, okay, we can do this. Here's our team. There's Hio and JK and a bunch of other women in our leadership team. The first thing that Jennifer, Kilian, and I got busy doing is building out the teams New York, San Francisco, London, and Berlin. We quickly added a guy in Tokyo. We have a small team in Shanghai, another couple of people in Sao Paulo, somebody in Sydney, and soon there should be 2 or 3 other locations and maybe a little spot on the moon. We've come so far over the past year, and we've evolved so much. We started out thinking we were just going to kind of build walls around our group and be this super sexy, groovy design shop inside this old fuddy-duddy company. But what we realized is that didn't behoove us in any way. It was better to actually integrate and have more permeable boundaries between McKinsey and MDL and design. So we have these different groups that we work with, but it makes for a really powerful product offering for the clients because you've got the traditional McKinsey consultants, our designers, and then the McKinsey Digital Lab people, the software engineers who can actually implement the things that we ideate, which is something that can be rewarding for designers. Because at Fjord, I lost a couple of people because they didn't get the chance to see the baby come to fruition. So it makes for powerful, diverse teams. One of the things that I noticed over time as I kept track of the people that I was hiring is that we constantly had about 50% women, not just women in the design team, but women in the leadership of design. And this was something that was very interesting and exciting, and we kind of spent a lot of time thinking about, but there was no time to think. It did make me think, however, what was it like in the rest of MDL, McKinsey Digital Labs? What was their hiring trajectory overall, and what was their hiring trajectory for women? And what you'll see is that from 2014 to 2015, the total number of hires more than doubled, but the number of women hires actually almost tripled. And then there's a smaller subset of this. The numbers are too small to really demonstrate, but the women in leadership from 2014 to 2015 more than doubled. So there are a lot of implications for companies hiring more women in business, and especially women within leadership roles. Business, not just governments and NGOs, but business control the world economies. So it's business that need to embrace these kinds of changes and remove the glass ceilings, allowing women to have more access to the decision making. It makes for much more powerful teams. There are lots of different studies that I'll show that demonstrate that more diverse teams achieve higher results. One of the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about is that we live in such a deeply connected and global world these days. So it should come as no surprise that the more diverse the teams are, the higher the results will be. One of the studies that came out of the Kellogg School of Management, they looked at groups and the results of these groups. They compared groups that were the same, the types of groups of people that were the same and people that were not the same. And just the very presence of one diverse person, whether it's gender or ethnicity or whatever it is, created a sort of awkwardness, a tension. And that tension, that awkwardness, actually proved higher and stronger results. The same group, those people felt very comfortable, so they thought that their results were better. But actually, when the individuals were interviewed later, they reported not feeling as good about it because even if they had novel ideas, they didn't want to report on those because they didn't want to be different. They wanted to be the same. So the groups that were different, there was more equal representation. The people were forced to demonstrate their own personal view, each of those being different, and it had stronger performance. So I thought that was fascinating and really applicable for our type of research, our type of work. There was another McKinsey report done. We looked at 366 public companies in the US, the UK, LATAM, and Canada. And the results found that there's a direct correlation between diverse management and better financial performance. And there are all these statistics, and it's really hard to stay back with the quartile and the percentages, so I won't do that. But the fact that they found an unequal performance of companies in the same industry and in the same companies demonstrates that diversity is a competitive differentiator. I thought that was really cool. Another study that was done, the Harvard Business Review, found that, well, so overall, there are 50% of women in the working age of the world population. So a McKinsey Global Institute report found that if 4 distinct areas can be improved upon, then women will have the opportunity to reach their full potential. And this stuff was like difficult to digest and difficult to put words to. But basically, in these 4 key areas, it's education level, legal representation or legal protection from things like sexual harassment, unpaid care work, and digital inclusion. These 4 areas, if there's progress made on those, there could be $12 trillion added to the GDP, the global GDP. And GDP is a measurement of value added, not just sales. So it's a significant indicator. It took a while for me to get my head around like all those statistics and what it actually means, but that's what it means. Finally, we partnered with Lean In, and there were a lot of things that came out of this study that were recurring themes. First, there's this constant and persistent gender gap between men and women. And one of the things that came up a lot in my research on this is the unpaid care work. So just the very fact of time that it takes away from a woman, for example, taking care of the children, doing the grocery shopping, the household chores, all these domestic duties that may seem trivial on the surface, actually take away from a woman advancing her career. Because at the time that you could be home working on a PowerPoint presentation or working through the wee hours of the night for a client, instead, if you're doing the unpaid care work, those things take away. So one of the best ways to fix that is to just institutionalize paternity leave. And I know my first thought was, is this just about guys wanting the chance to relax with the kids too? But it's much deeper than that. It actually redistributes the imbalance of unpaid care work, and it has a huge impact on how women can have the opportunity to advance their careers. And in one of the studies I read, it said the United States is one of the only countries in the civilized world that does not have this as an institutionalized policy. And I was thinking, well, what's the definition of civilized? Because it should be institutionalized. Another recurrent theme and something that came out of this study is the need for increased representation of women in leadership. So this is another thing about removing that glass barrier. Having more women in leadership, either through organic growth, through promoting women within an organization, or hiring women into leadership positions. Studies show that women will naturally help other women and try to help bring them up. And a lot of men in this study self-reported that they were uncomfortable sponsoring women and helping them to advance because it looked bad. You know, it didn't look good to go to lunch very often with somebody, or worse, go to dinner, go after hours. You can't just go to drinks with another female because it doesn't look good. So some of these stigmas hold women back and hold the whole progress back. The last thing is the internal barriers, the fear that women have that they cannot have it all. Because the implication with the things like unpaid care work and those kinds of things is that to have it all, one must do it all. And that just isn't possible. So if you have these internal barriers and you know that you have to do it all in order to have it all, you won't actually try. And a lot of women self-reported that these were some of their anxieties about going to the next level. And at McKinsey, that's something we're really looking at, is how we'll bring in a lot of women and they'll move up to a certain level, and at a certain level they'll fall out. And we're trying to figure out more policies of how to keep them in. And thankfully, the the benefits people, the human resources people are, they're clever. They have lots of ideas about women that are near term to have their baby, that they can work less hours, and the team comes in, leans in, and helps out with more hours or more of the work, and then the maternity leaves happen, and then there's something else called soft launch, where when the woman's coming back from leave, it's a similar kind of thing. And having those kinds of institutionalized policies where there's a common understanding across the board, men and women, that really helps foster the growth and the promotion of women. So in conclusion, of course we can't achieve all of these goals in a day or overnight. But certainly you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So as we continue to acknowledge these things and focus on these things, hopefully we'll move in the direction of hiring more women and promoting more women or hiring more women in leadership roles, because ultimately it's a better design. Thank you.